I'm Ronald Quigley from Last Act Entertainment. I'm here on Indiegogo to try and raise funds for our new short film called Malory Nicole. It's a story about revenge and the perfect crime. I play Malory, a guy who's just served 30 years in the penitentiary. He gets out and there's no one there to pick him up. He walks over to the highway and he starts hitchhiking. But nobody's gonna pick him up because he's a convict. He looks like a convict. So he's hitchhiking in a haphazard manner, not really paying attention whether the cars are pulling over. So finally we POV over his shoulder and we see a car pull over. So he goes running up to the car and he opens the door. We look inside, we meet our character, Nicole, a young woman of about 35 years old, played by Lynn Shear from New York. He gets in, and the conversation starts. She says, "What are you doing out here in the middle of nowhere?" He goes, "I just got out." She says, "What? Prison?" He goes, "Yeah." He says, "If you want to let me out, I'll understand." She says, "No, that won't be necessary." So there's another moment of uncomfortable silence. She says, "How long were you in?" He says, 30 years. She says, "Damn, you've been in jail almost as long as I've been alive." He goes, "Yeah." He says, "You go to jail," he says, "and people forget that you exist or that you ever existed." He said, "I completely ruined my life." She says, "Well, what did you do?" He says, "I'd rather not talk about it if it's all the same to you." And they ride in an uncomfortable silence a little bit further. Finally, they pull into the town and she's letting him out. And he gets out of the car and he starts to walk away. But he remembers, he turns back for a minute and he says, "Hey, do you know where there's a bank?" She says, "Why? Do you want to rob it?" He goes, "No, I'm reformed now." And he pulls out a prison check. And we see that the check is for $432.64. This is all the man has for 30 years in a penitentiary. She says, 2 blocks that way. He turns and walks away. She looks at him for just a minute and she pulls away. We then cut to his room and he's counting that money out. And as he does, he throws it on the bed. And then he takes the change out and he starts counting that. He throws that on the bed. He starts to get undressed to go take a shower because he's just covered with sweat because he's been out hitchhiking on the desert for several hours. So when he takes his shirt off, we see that his body is completely tattooed with prison tattoos, very bizarre prison tattoos. When he's coming out of the shower, as he's drying his hair off, he can hear a commotion down the way. He looks out the door and there's a woman getting accosted by like a Wall Street type guy, a soft Wall Street guy. He goes to the woman's aid and he yells at the guy, "Hey, leave her alone." The guy turns to him and says, "Get the f*** out of here. This isn't any of your business." He says, "I just made it my business." He goes up and kind of bitch slaps the guy. And he's a soft guy to begin with and kind of kicks him in the ass and the guy runs away. He turns to help the woman out and he looks and he goes, "You? It's the woman that picked him up. What the hell was that all about?" She goes, "An asshole customer wanted his money back." He goes, "What? What kind of customer?" She says, "Mister, you have been in jail for a long time." He goes, "What? You're a prostitute?" She says, "Ah, forget about it. I'll buy you a drink for helping a girl out." Now we cut to the bar. We see the glasses clinking and she says, "The chivalry." He says, "What, did that go away since I went into jail?" "I just can't believe how the world has changed since I went to jail." She says, "Well, what did you do to go to jail, or don't you want to talk about it?" He kind of looks at her and he realizes that they have some type of a bond or some type of a relationship. So he says, "Listen," he said, "I was involved in a stick-up." He said, "A guy got shot." He said, "I didn't pull the trigger. But when you're involved in a crime and if someone dies, you get the same penalty as the guy that pulled the trigger." So the other guy got executed a long time ago. Here I sit 30 years later. She says, "Wow, that's a sad story for everyone involved." He goes, "Yeah." He said, "But I can't change it. What's done is done." She says, "Well, what are you going to do now that you're out?" He says, "I don't know. I never thought about it. I never thought I was going to get out." He said, "I don't know. Maybe I'll find the family of the people of the guy that I shot and try to get that straightened out." He says, "But," she says, "Well, how would you find him?" He says, "I don't know." He says, "All I know is that his name is Giles." There's got to be a million Giles in the world. She looks at him and she can see that he's kind of a nice guy and there's something about him. She says, "Do you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to give you a free one." He says, "Why?" She says, "Well, you've been in jail for 30 years and, you helped me out." He goes, "No, I couldn't." She says, "Yes, you can." She goes, come on, you just got out, live a little. So we cut back to the room, and they have stopped and gotten a bottle of whiskey. So they're drinking the whiskey. We're seeing them pour the whiskey. She pulls out a packet. She goes, do you know what this is? My character goes, I don't know. Drugs? She says, no, cocaine. They had that before you went away, right? My character says, yeah, but... She says, but what? He said, I got a bad heart. He said, I can't. She says, come on, I want you to have the time of your life. So they start snorting the cocaine and drinking the booze, and then we see them kissing, and we see them making love, and there's a whole montage here. There's a montage of sex. We see all the sexual things that get hot and steamy. So then what ends up happening is she pulls out a little blue pill and sticks it in his mouth. He goes, what's this? She goes, take it, it'll make it better. I give it to all my customers. So he pops it back in his mouth, and next thing you know, we have this whole montage of them making love. We see the tattoos. She's tatted up herself. So we see the tattoos intermingling. We see the legs and the arms and the hair, and it's a very quick cut montage. It cuts to a couple hours later, and they're laying in bed, and she has her shoulder on her head on his shoulder. She reaches down and grabs his crotch. He says, I can't. I've been going at this for hours. She says, that's not what I'm feeling. He says, that's because you gave me that damn pill. She says, one more time and I'll leave you alone. So now he gets up behind her and he starts mounting her from behind. And he gets very woozy when he does. And he loses all the color in his face. We can just see that this guy's getting very sick, and he gets even more woozy. Finally, she flips him over and she almost goes insane. And she's yelling, me, me, is that all you got after 30 years? Come on, me. Finally, my character pushes her off. He says, get on to the office and tell them to call the paramedics. I'm having a heart attack. She says, oh my God. She starts throwing her clothes on. She says, I think there's some aspirin in my purse. And she goes out the door. My character goes back to the purse and starts rifling through the purse to try and find the aspirin, but there's no aspirin in there. We cut back outside the door and we see that she's out there just smoking a cigarette. We cut back inside. My character takes the purse. He throws the contents of the purse onto the bed, and as he does, her wallet flips over and we see that her name is Nicole Giles. That's the same name as the man that he had killed 30 years ago. She hears my character fall over. She steps out the cigarette and comes back in the room. When she does, my character's literally taken his last breath. She says, did you figure it out? That was my dad. My character says, but I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I didn't mean. She says, tell that to my father when you see him. And my character falls over dead. She goes back to the bed, throws the contents of the purse back into the purse, puts the purse on her shoulder, goes over to the mirror, straightens herself up, looks in the mirror, takes a little lipstick, puts a little lipstick on, goes to the door, opens the handle, and yells, hurry, someone come quick. I think he's having a heart attack. And we fade to black. That's the story. Now the pitch. This story doesn't come to life without your help. I'm asking everybody that's ever seen me on stage, everybody that knows me, anybody that's ever heard of me, please jump on board. Help us achieve our goal. It's only with your help that we can get this film made. I believe that we have a very special film here. These things have never been done before. It's sex revenge with the perfect crime. Now, our perks start at $15 and they go up to $1,000. I'm not asking anybody to give me $1,000, but if you do, I'll take it. But $15, $20, $25, that's the ones that are going to get our movie done. So please help me. And I thank you in advance.